Oscar Piastri had every reason to be proud of his weekend at Monza until he didn't. For the better part of the Italian Grand Prix, he was doing everything right. He'd managed the pace, stayed ahead of Lando Norris, and even leapfrogged his teammate in the pits thanks to a rare McLaren slip-up. But in one moment, all of that was wiped clean by a team radio message that honestly should have never been sent. Let Lando through. That was it. Cold final, no room for discussion. And just like that, Piastri went from outfoxing his teammate to being used as the team's damage control. Let's back up. This wasn't just about team orders. It was about the unspoken contract drivers sign with their team. Not the legal one, but the emotional one. The one that says, if I deliver, you back me up. And that trust took a hit when McLaren forced Piastri to hand over second place because Lando's pit stop had gone long, a mistake that wasn't Oscar's fault. A mistake that in the racing world is just part of the gamble. That's what made this call so controversial. McLaren didn't just ask Piastri to move over, they asked him to rewrite the story of the race. And that's what triggered the outrage. Fans weren't mad that Norris finished ahead. They were mad about how it happened. Because when your driver nails the strategy, wins the pit battle, and holds track position fair and square, and you still tell him to step aside, you're not managing the race, you're managing the narrative. That's not Formula One, that's PR with helmets on. And this wasn't an isolated blip. F1 fans have memories like elephants on caffeine. They remember Hungary, the situation was flipped. Norris had to give the place back to Piastri after a strategy swing. He didn't love it, but he did it. And McLaren, at the time, chalked it up to fair play. Pit strategy wins or loses you places. That's the game. But if that's the rule, why was the rule broken here? That's where the suspicion creeps in, because this didn't feel like a one-off call. It felt like favoritism. And the worst part? McLaren created this whole mess themselves. Piastri's stop was clean, Norris's wasn't, the swap happened naturally, no one was robbed, no one gained unfairly, until the radio crackled. To make things worse, Max Verstappen had front row seats to the drama, and he wasn't impressed. When asked about the decision, he laughed, straight up laughed. He compared bad pit stops to engine failures or driver mistakes, just part of racing. And he's right. When things go wrong in the pits, you don't call up the FIA and ask for a do-overs. You suck it up and fight back on track. That's how real champions operate. Verstappen's comment wasn't just a jab, it was a warning. From someone who's lived through Red Bull's civil wars, he knows exactly how these things start. But inside McLaren, the tone was different. Norris defended the call, saying it was part of a pre-race agreement, something both drivers supposedly signed off on, but even his words felt carefully wrapped, like someone trying to put out a fire without drawing attention to the smoke. And Piastri, he didn't explode, didn't throw anyone under the bus, but his disappointment was crystal clear. We said pit stops were part of racing, so I don't get what's changed, he said. That's not just a statement, that's a crack in the foundation. And in F1, those cracks widen fast, especially when a young driver like Piastri, arguably one of the most composed rookies on the grid, is being asked to play the good soldier while Norris climbs the points. McLaren's leadership probably thought they were keeping things tidy. In reality, they'd just thrown a match into a room full of fuel. See, there's a reason why team orders in Formula One are always controversial. It's not because people don't understand strategy, it's because they know when strategy crosses the line into manipulation. And that's what this felt like, a manufactured reshuffle dressed up as policy. Not a reaction to racing, but a correction to optic. And when a team starts managing perception over performance, that's when things go sideways. The fans saw it instantly. Social media lit up with fury, commentators didn't hold back, even former drivers were shaking their heads. Nico Rosberg, who knows a thing or two about intra-team warfare, pointed out the danger. If you start treating pit stop errors like glitches that must be fixed with on-track swaps, you're walking into dangerous territory. Drivers accept that racing is chaotic. They live for that chaos. But when the pit wall starts rewriting the script mid-race, the chaos becomes control. And nobody, especially not young, hungry drivers, signs up to be controlled. Piastri's situation is even more delicate. He's not just another driver, he's the one who turned down Alpine in dramatic fashion, the guy who many see as a future world champion. He's calm, calculated, and rarely emotional. But even the calmest driver has limits. Being told to surrender a podium spot that he earned fair and square, that chips away at more than points, it chips away at pride, at belief, at trust, and in a sport where confidence is everything, that's lethal. Now, McLaren will argue this was all part of the bigger picture. Keep harmony, avoid inter-team drama, play the long game. But the problem with that logic is it ignores the reality of elite competition. These drivers aren't colleagues. They're rivals wearing the same shirt. And when you try too hard to keep them equal, you often end up making things worse, especially when the decisions don't feel equal at all. This isn't just about Monza, this is about what happens next. Because once you start a pattern, people begin to notice. And this looked like a pattern. Hungary last year, Monza this year. So, both times, one driver loses track position due to pit stop drama, and both times the team steps in conveniently when it benefits the same person. That's not racing, that's chess with human pieces. And eventually, the pieces fight back. Even inside the paddock, there's a growing sense that McLaren may be too focused on managing its image instead of unleashing its potential. Norris is clearly talented. Piastri is equally sharp. On paper, McLaren should be thrilled. Two drivers capable of delivering results, pushing each other, making the team stronger, but instead of letting that competition breathe, they're putting it in a box, controlling it, smoothing it out, and in doing so, they're muting what could be an era-defining rivalry. Look at Verstappen, look at Hamilton, look at Alonso. Great drivers thrive on friction, on pressure, on the freedom to race and prove themselves. If McLaren keeps micromanaging outcomes, they're not just hurting Piastri, they're limiting the very thing that could make them unbeatable, a genuine, raw, no-holds-barred intra-team battle. That's how dynasties are built. Not with controlled narratives, with fire. The frustration is they almost had it. The race had drama, pace, action. Verstappen was back in top form, but both McLarens were right there, showing strength. Instead of celebrating a strong weekend, though, McLaren spent their Sunday night defending a decision no one asked for. And that's the tragedy here. They created a mess out of something that didn't need fixing. There's a difference between being a team player and being played by the team. Oscar Piastri's calm response masked a growing storm, one that's beginning to swirl not just inside McLaren, but across the entire F1 paddock. Every driver knows when they're being set up to fail under the guise of team unity, and every fan knows when something doesn't sit right. The Monza incident wasn't just a strategy call. It was a moment that exposed the cracks beneath McLaren's polished exterior. Team orders have always existed, but their use has to be justified, not just on a spreadsheet, but in the hearts and minds of everyone watching. When Ferrari swapped their drivers mid-race in the Schumacher era, it made sense because there was a title on the line. When Red Bull let Verstappen through against Ricciardo in the past, it was because he had the pace. But here, what was the reasoning? A 6-second pit stop? That's a team error, not a racing incident. And if teams start patching their own mistakes by sacrificing the drivers who didn't make them, what does that say about integrity? It's hard not to feel for Piastri. He did everything by the book, stayed calm under pressure, executed perfectly, and still got demoted. No tantrums, no snarky radio messages, just a quiet compliance that felt more powerful than an outburst. But that silence can be dangerous. Drivers who bite their tongue too long eventually snap. They start driving for themselves instead of the team. They stop trusting the pit wall. And once that happens, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. This also shines a light on how McLaren views its lineup. Whether they admit it or not, moments like these hint at a hierarchy. Norris, the fan favorite and longtime McLaren face, appears to be getting the benefit of the doubt. And maybe he's earned some of that through loyalty and performance, blueprints. But in Formula One, the moment you start favoring familiarity over form, you start slipping backwards. Because talent doesn't wait. And Piastri isn't here to be someone's understudy. If McLaren's leadership doesn't address this quickly and clearly, they risk losing more than just driver morale. They risk losing momentum. For the first time in years, they've got a car that can regularly fight near the front. They've got two drivers who can put pressure on Red Bull when the stars align. But all of that can be derailed by internal politics. A united team with slightly slower pace can still win. A divided one, never. The Verstappen factor only sharpens the narrative. While McLaren were busy untangling their mess, Max walked away with yet another win. No drama, no confusion, just pure execution. And that contrast made McLaren look even more amateur. Because while they were focused on fairness, Verstappen was focused on finishing first. That's the cold truth of racing. No one cares how it looks if it gets the job done. The noise from Monza won't die down anytime soon. Fans are demanding answers, journalists are digging into past decisions, and Piastri's quiet compliance is now being seen for what it really was, a warning shot, a sign that the harmony inside McLaren isn't as stable as it seems. If this becomes a trend, the narrative will shift from McLaren's rise to McLaren's self-sabotage. In the end, trust is everything. Between driver and team, between fans and the sport, break that trust and the consequences echo far beyond one weekend. Monza should have been a celebration. Instead, it's a cautionary tale, one that McLaren and the rest of the grid won't be forgetting anytime soon.